Hello, everyone. Welcome to Inconvenient Truths. I'm your host, Jennifer Zeng. You must have heard the news that former CCP head Jiang Zemin died on November 30th. You may have also noticed the died on demand phrase at the beginning of the title for my show today. What do I mean by died on demand? Today, I will talk about this, as well as the 6 legacies Jiang left us, as well as the profound impact. First of all, what is died on demand? On November 13th, a post was widely circulated on Chinese social media saying that the Chinese search engine site Baidu had received a notice to change its app and website to a black and white color. All splash ads should be stopped too. What does mean by turning the app and website into a black and white color? Well, this is what actually happened after Jiang Zemin died. Baidu's main page was turned into black and white color. This is Xinhua's main page, also in black and white color. On the same day, that is, on November 13th, Qin Feng, a famous current affair journalist and host who once worked for the Phoenix TV and Hong Kong Satellite TV as a news director, posted on her Weibo account saying that 江水东流去 in Chinese, which means literally that the river runs to the east. On November 30th, after the news of Jiang Zemin's death was announced, she posted on her Weibo account again, "Let me say one more time, the river runs to the east." As the Chinese word for river she used was Jiangshui, the first word is the same as Jiang Zemin's surname. People then realized that when she said the river runs to the east on November 13th, she actually meant that Jiang Zemin had died. Remember, that was November 13th. What's interesting is yesterday when I checked her Weibo page, I found that there was a warning on the main page. See the sentence in the red circle which says, "Due to violation of relevant laws and regulations, the user is currently banned from posting." I also found that both her posts about the river runs to the east were no longer there. They had been deleted. What I show you was captured before by some other netizens. By the way, Qin Feng has more than 14 million followers on Weibo. On November 16th, someone posted a long article on Twitter and said that the arbitrary of Jiang Zemin, that was the arbitrary of Jiang Zemin, and Jiang had died. Well, I compared this arbitrary with the actual one published by Xinhua. I must say that the two versions are very, very similar. So the one leaked on November 16th could well be the draft version. Popular Chinese language YouTuber Jiang Feng said in his show that according to several of his sources in China, Jiang was in a near-death situation as early as 1 month ago, just after the CCP's 20th National Congress. By the way, I noticed that Jiang indeed did not show up at the CCP's 20th National Congress, although it was reported that he was in Beijing for the meeting. So during that time, Jiang Zemin's wife notified their close relatives, asking them to go to Shanghai to do a farewell. Xi Jinping also knew this. By the way, Jiang Zemin lived in Shanghai. So according to CCP's tradition, Xi should have gone to Shanghai to pay his last visit too. But because Xi was preparing to attend the G20 summit, he didn't go. Since then, Jiang Zemin had been on life support. The plan was, after she went back from the G20 summit, he would go to Shanghai to pay his last visit at the end of November. Then the CCP would announce that Jiang was dead. However, before she was able to go to Shanghai, nationwide protests broke out and directly targeted Xi Jinping, the CCP, and their zero-COVID policy. At such a time, dealing with the protests was, of course, the first priority. Also, November 30th would be the seventh day after dozens of people were burned to death in a fire in Urumqi in Xinjiang on November 24th. You know, the Chinese people have been believing in reincarnation for thousands of years. They believe that after people die, if they are not bad enough to go to hell, they will reincarnate back as human beings. They also believe that on the seventh day after people's death, people's souls will pay their last visit to their homes and their beloved ones before they depart permanently to be born into another family. So many Chinese people regard the seventh day very important and will arrange a special ceremony and a special food for their family's souls' last visit. Well, since November 30th would be the seventh day since the death of Urumqi fire victims, and as the nationwide protests were triggered by the fire, so many people were expecting another round of large-scale protests on November 30th. That's why Jiang Zemin had to die on November 30th. Some people say he had died at least 2 weeks ago. Some people say his life support was removed on November 30th so that he would die on demand. When the news was announced, it immediately attracted all of the major media's attention and became a trending topic on Chinese social media too. That's why people refer to Jiang's death as death on demand. See this cartoon, it is called The Last Contribution by Qian Qi. Chinese people usually referred to Jiang Zemin as the toad, as he looked like one very much, so he was portrayed as a toad in this cartoon. After Jiang's death was announced, many international media outlets gave him high reviews, and many Chinese people said that he was much better than Xi Jinping, etc. Is it really the case? Next, I'd talk about Jiang Zemin's 6 political legacies and the profound impact on China and the world. When the 1989 Tiananmen movement happened, Jiang was the CCP party secretary of Shanghai City. He actively supported Deng Xiaoping's policy to crack down on the movement by shutting down a well-known newspaper in Shanghai called the World Economic Herald. The newspaper had reported positively on the students' movement. So after the Tiananmen massacre, because of Jiang's active support, he gained Deng Xiaoping's trust and was chosen as the CCP's next leader. In the meantime, Zhao Ziyang, who was supposed to be Deng Xiaoping's successor, was removed and put under house arrest for 15 years until he died, because he sympathized with the students. As a result, Jiang Zemin became the biggest beneficiary of the Tiananmen massacre. However, he still lacked the foundation within the party and the system. In order to gain support, he encouraged corruption. In other words, he used opportunities or privileges to corrupt as his bribery to gain support. He had a famous saying, shutting up your mouth and making a fortune, 闷声发大财. It can also be translated as keep quiet, make big money. In the process of the so-called privatization of state-owned enterprises, astronomical amounts of state assets became CCP officials' own wealth. Jiang Zemin's son Jiang Mianheng got a nickname, the number one corrupt official in China. The collusion between government and business was so serious, the corruption was so rampant that it was entirely out of control. We all know that since Xi Jinping came to power 10 years ago, he has punished more than 4 million corrupt CCP officials. 4 million. That's how bad the situation was. Of course, one reason for Xi Jinping to purge the corrupt officials was to eliminate his political enemies. But another reason was that he indeed wanted to save the party, and he indeed believed that the party would be finished if the corruption continued. However, Xi Jinping's tragedy was that he later reached a compromise with Jiang Zemin and Zeng Qinghong, who is an important member of the Jiang faction and the former vice chairman of China. She arrested a lot of lower-level officials without really dealing with the ones on the top, such as Jiang Zemin and Zeng Qinghong's families. And the corruption situation is too serious to be saved anyway. The problem is the CCP not only corrupts its own officials, but Western politicians and elites as well. According to former CCP diplomat Chen Yonglin, who defected to Australia in 2005, some retired Western politicians were treated like an emperor when they visited China. As a result, these politicians started singing praises about the CCP after they returned. For some Western business elites, maybe they were quite good when they did business in Western countries. However, when they went to China, they soon realized that bribery was the only path for them to get around. So they soon became as corrupt as the CCP officials. Seeing the success of their corruption, the CCP used more money to corrupt the world. Some of the bad consequences have already shown themselves to us, and some of them have not yet. We can never overestimate its damage. The second legacy of Jiang Zemin is the persecution of Falun Gong, which started in 1999 and is still going on today. Falun Gong is a spiritual practice rooted in the Buddhist tradition. It has 3 principles: truth, compassion, and forbearance, or tolerance, to follow in one's daily life, and 5 sets of gentle exercises, including meditation. It was first introduced to the public in 1992. After 7 years, in 1999, it had attracted 70 to 100 million practitioners, and the number exceeded that of the CCP party members. So, out of jealousy, Jiang Zemin decided to persecute Falun Gong. To achieve the goal of eliminating Falun Gong, at one stage, a quarter of the country's financial resources was invested in the persecution. And because there was no legal basis at all to persecute those innocent, law-abiding people, Jiang Zemin set up a so-called 16 office system that used party power to override all the legal and governmental systems. This ended the last hope for China to try to govern by rule of law. To tackle the large number of Falun Gong practitioners, the prisons and labor camps were not enough. So many other places, such as schools, mental hospitals, hotels, etc., were also used to imprison Falun Gong practitioners. A special code was embedded in Falun Gong practitioners' national ID cards. Their cell phones were monitored, etc. All the methods and experiences gained in the persecution of Falun Gong were later used on other groups such as Uyghurs, Hong Kong protesters, and now all the COVID slaves or prisoners in China. Only not many people have realized this. In order to suppress the principles of truth, compassion, and forbearance or tolerance, Jiang Zemin and the CCP had to promote the opposite values. Or it is exactly because what Falun Gong promotes and practices is completely opposite to what the CCP is and represents. It was inevitable that Jiang Zemin chose to use the CCP's power to eliminate it. In the beginning stage of the persecution, in order to find out who was a Falun Gong practitioner or judge whether a Falun Gong practitioner had really given up his or her belief, the police would ask this person to curse, to say some nasty words. Sometimes the police officer would throw a stone into a crowd and observe the reactions. Whoever cursed and reacted badly was not a Falun Gong practitioner, and whoever said nothing and remained very calm and peaceful must be a Falun Gong practitioner. That is how ridiculous things really were. As a result, the overall morality of the entire society declined terribly. Yesterday, I posted a video on Twitter. Let's watch it together. Well, you can see this was a video, I think, recorded by a surveillance camera on November 28th. You can see after that person fell on the ground, no one even tried to check or help. One follower posted such a comment under this video, quote, "Videos like this, I have seen a few now, make me really worried about the future. If the Chinese people really are these canners, we have a real monster on our hands. I mean, it physically hurts me to watch this, and I want to jump through the video frame to help," unquote. I want to jump through the video frame to help. I think that is the normal reaction from any normal person in a normal society. Why has China become what it is today? I'd say Jiang Zemin's persecution on Falun Gong played a huge role on this. What will happen if a society even doesn't allow truth, compassion, tolerance, and encourage lies, corruption, evil means, and violence? Even if the CCP does collapse today, there will be a long way to go for China to rebuild its values and morality and to become a place that is suitable for normal human beings to live again. The Great Firewall that blocked overseas information and websites was established during Jiang Zemin's time by Jiang Zemin's eldest son Jiang Mianheng with the help of Western companies such as Cisco. Now almost everyone knows the term jump over the wall, 翻墙, which means to try to bypass the CCP's Great Firewall to get access to free information. Not only everyone knows, but not everyone knows that the need to set up such a great firewall in the first place was to persecute Falun Gong. As I said earlier, there were about 70 to 100 million Falun Gong practitioners in China in 1999. So when you decided to persecute such a large group, the scale was unprecedented. On the other hand, the resistance that you would encounter from such a large group was also unprecedented. And one of the unprecedented phenomena is there are also many Falun Gong practitioners in other countries, especially in the US. Many Falun Gong practitioners in the US were university students when the persecution first started. Some of them were IT engineers. So they set up a Falun Gong website in the US, and through the internet, they were able to connect information from China and facilitate communication channels between practitioners in China and out of China. So many shocking facts of the persecution were soon able to be exposed in the international world, and the practitioners in China could still gain the latest information, including the latest articles or speeches by the founder of Falun Gong, Mr. Li Hongzhi, whom Jiang Zemin hated very much because Mr. Li had more followers than him. This also made the task of eliminating Falun Gong harder. That's why Jiang felt a great firewall was needed and then spent a huge amount of money to establish it. Now, everyone in China, including foreigners and foreign companies in China, have to deal with it. We talk about the mysterious disappearance of high school students and other children recently and the possibility of them becoming victims of organ harvesting. The practice of harvesting organs from death row prisoners might have started as early as during the Cultural Revolution in China. However, only after the persecution of Falun Gong and under the personal instruction of Jiang Zemin has it become a billion-dollar industry. Because of the large number of imprisoned Falun Gong practitioners, it became possible to test their blood types, store the data in a computer center, and set up a living organ bank. Whenever someone needs an organ, it is easy to do a search in that database, find a match, and then kill that person so that his or her organs can be sold to the customer. One person's organs can be sold for $500,000 US if all the organs can be utilized. That's why hospitals in China can find a match for you within weeks, while you have to wait for years in other countries. Sometimes they even do the same-day emergency transplants. Since the industrialized organ harvesting and transplant production lines have been set up, they cannot be stopped. If the supplies from Falun Gong practitioners were not enough, it is very natural that Uyghurs and other prisoners also become part of the source of the organ bank. While the CCP's official hospitals and prisons can use state-endorsed power to get organs from the prisoners, other ordinary individual criminals in society can only turn to the criminal underground and kidnap students, children, and other ordinary people in society. That's why so many students and children go missing every year in China now. We all know that Jiang Zemin studied in Russia or the former Soviet Union when he was young in the 1950s. It was widely reported that when he was in the Soviet Union, he had a mistress who was a KGB spy. Because of this, Jiang Zemin also became a KGB spy member. And then in December 1999, Jiang signed a treaty with visiting Russian President Yeltsin, which virtually gave out more than 1 million square kilometers. Some also say 3.44 million kilometers of China's territory to Russia. See the red part of this map. These are said to be China's territory, but were given away to Russia by Jiang Zemin. Why did Jiang do this? People say he wanted to cover up his history of being recruited by the Soviet Union as a KGB spy. Well, the above are the 6 legacies of Jiang Zemin. Their impact is far-reaching and profound, and what I talk about is only the tip of the iceberg because many secrets and crimes are still closely guarded by the CCP. Until the CCP collapses, we have no idea of the full picture. Well, that's all for today. Thank you so much for watching. If you are new here, please subscribe to my channel, or if you are already subscribed, please like and share my content and check if you are still subscribed. Also, if you could, please go to my website and Jennifer Zeng blog, jenniferzengblog.com. Sign up for a membership or make a donation to support my truth-telling efforts. Thank you. See you next time and have a very nice weekend.